Hello, and thank you for joining us for a quick demo of our JMGSolutions Super Importer and Exporter as it relates to FIMS data from Blackbaud. Our Super Importer Exporter is just a standard Razor's Edge plugin that you may have used any of the Blackbaud plugins before, and it is fully available to not only on-prem clients, but in the Blackbaud cloud to both Razor's Edge 7 and Razor's Edge NXT customers. In the Blackbaud cloud, it is a standard plugin and is there and ready for you to access it. Our Super Importer Exporter takes data from, in this case, FIMS. And what we do in FIMS is we create a couple of data grids, and we create a profile file, and we create a GIFs file. So on the screen here, you can see I actually have two files. I have the profile.xls and I have the gifs.xls. These are just two standard exports created via the data grid in FIMS. So the standard process would be at whatever time frame you want, typically once a week, once a month. You export out newly changed, newly added, or any updated profiles, and then of course new GIFs for that time frame. And then you save them in a particular data folder, either on your local network drive or in the Blackbaud cloud. And the Super Importer Exporter will pick up that data. So how does it work? The Super Importer Exporter takes, we create what we call a mapping document. And inside this mapping document, which you see I have highlighted here, allows us to specify what to do with the FIMS data, both the profile and the GIFs file. So on this very first general screen, there's not a whole lot of information in here that's super important, a lot of just setup stuff. For example, whether you want a constituent or queries created at the end of the process, some setup stuff around date formats and what country. However, we do have something called the constituent matcher, which I'm actually going to show you at the end of the video when we actually run the plugin. Under the source tab, we got some basic information in here. Now, this looks very complicated, and you don't have to worry too much about this. This is setup stuff done by us when we help implement you. But basically, as I showed you in this file, we have two files. We have a profile file and a GIFs file. And by default, what we do is we set it up as one import. So we take all the profiles and process them, then we process all of the GIFs all in the same. So what you see in here is just some complex SQL code which actually merges the two documents together. The power behind the entire system is our field mapping tab. And within our field mapping tab, this allows us to map all of the data that is coming from FIMS into Razor's Edge or Razor's Edge NXT. So you can see here, the very first column is all of the FIMS data. If I was to open up those two Excel files, you will notice that they all have exactly those same fields in there. The second column is all of the Razor's Edge record areas where the data is going to be going. Now, what I mean by that, if I click on the drop-down, you can see here I've got all of the Razor's Edge areas. I've got constituent, I've got gift, I've got action, I've got phone. And then once you decide which area, record type, the destination is specifically which particular field inside that is going to go. Now, the custom values and our table function, what this allows us to do is to clean up or transform the data. So, for example, there's a field in FIMS called IND or ORG, and it actually says IND or ORG. Well, in Razor's Edge, if you were importing data, it needs to know whether it's an individual organization, and we set the key indicator. It's only one character. So what I do in my custom values, instead of having to make you go into the Excel spreadsheet and edit it, what we do in here is we say, using the left function. Now, these custom values are very much like Excel functions. They are not Excel functions, but if you look through them, you're like, oh, I know that function from Excel. So we stole a bit from different popular programming languages to accomplish whatever tasks we needed to do. So this left one says just take the first character. Doesn't matter what it is, just take the first character, and we're going to map that to key indicator. If I come down here to the active field, in FIMS you have whether or not a constituent is active or not. But in Razor's Edge, the field is inactive. It's kind of the reverse. So what I do in my custom values here is I say, all right, it's going to be a yes or a no. That's what the value is coming out of FIMS. In Razor's Edge, because it's a checkbox, that means it's true or false. So what I do here is I say, okay, you know what? I only want to keep the no's. If it says yes, I don't care if they're active. I only care if they're not active. So I say, keep the no's, throw everything else away. Then I use our square bracket function to say, all right, if it's a no, make that true. And if it's false, or if it's blank, make it false. So that means not to check the checkbox. So the custom values are very powerful in allowing us to transform the data before. So our goal is you shouldn't have to export it out of FIMS, go into Excel and clean it up first, because that's a waste of time. We should be able to handle any changes or cleanup that might be needed based on the differences between how FIMS handles data and how Razor's Edge or Razor's Edge NXT does. And then last but not least is our table lookup, which basically is a larger version of the search and replace. So for example, if I take city and I use my city lookup, I could also come down here to something I map into fund, perhaps the fund ID, and if I need to transform the data. So if, for example, oops, I want to use, I could make up a table. So for example, if you had funds in FIMS, but they didn't exactly match your funds in Razor's Edge, then we could build a lookup, which would then allow you to map one to the other. So we have, between custom values and our tables, we have very many different ways of addressing that. So for example, I'll build a table here for funds. So maybe the funds is area of greatest need, but in Razor's Edge, we call that unrestricted, something like that. And I can just save that. So between our custom values and our funds, it allows us to do whatever we need. And then, of course, at the bottom, we have just some, go over here. We have some, we can also make manufacture data. So if there was other data that you wanted to build in the mapping that wasn't part of the FIMS data, but you require it in Razor's Edge, whatever that might be, maybe it's an attribute, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a note. We can manufacture data. We can also use the same field over and over again. So if we had to use the fund to not only build out the actual Razor's Edge fund, but as well as the Razor's Edge campaign, we could do that as well. The rest of the information is a lot of setup stuff. So if I come over here to constituents, we have an option to automatically proper case names and addresses. We also have a gender lookup. So if you don't have a gender mapped in FIMS and we know that Scott is male, we can map that for you. We also have some defaults for relationships and reciprocals if we're bringing spousal information in across from FIMS into Razor's Edge, and oftentimes relationship and reciprocal are required fields. So we have defaults for that. The big question that we always get is, how do you search for duplicates? If we're bringing information across, how do we make sure that we don't add extra records? We do not create, if we already have records in Razor's Edge and we're mapping in the FIMS data, because there may be other data we've put into Razor's Edge that maybe didn't come from FIMS. So what we do is we have a three-pronged approach. The first prong is ID number. Now, if I go back to the field mapping, you will notice that the very first field is the FIMS ID number, which we map as a source code, which becomes an alias in Razor's Edge. So if I come over, so what we do is we make this an alias. Aliases are alternate ways of searching for somebody. So if you're in FIMS and you've got their ID number, you can quickly copy it, and then you can port it over to Razor's Edge and quickly search for them. So that's the first step. So if we find them by an ID number, then we use it and we can update or add any new information from there. If we can't find them by ID number because they're truly new, then we search by email address. And if we can't find them by email address, we do a third search for phone number. Now, in addition to that, we also allow you to put in, if you want, a last name, a first name, and a zip code. So we would take somebody who had the same address, the same email address, the Cross family at gmail.com, and if there was a Scott Cross and an Alyssa Cross, we would actually treat those as two different people if we needed to, based on the FIMS data coming in. And then thirdly, if we still can't find the person or company by last name, first name, and email address, and phone number, then we just do a plain last name, first name, org name, and zip code search to try to find them. And if we still can't find them, then we serve them up as brand new. Oh, but we do give you an ability of doing your own manual search prior to it. When I show you the constituent matcher, when I'm done the mapping process and I run it, I will let you, I will show you that. The rest of the information is Razor's Edge specific stuff. Obviously, addressee salutations are important. Addresses are important. If the donor updates their address in FIMS and we detect that change, we then give you the ability, if you want, to store that as a former address. We have some phones and email defaults, and then of course we've got some constituent code defaults if we need to. As you know, constituent code is one of the key fields in Razor's Edge, so we give you options there. We also have a number of gift defaults, how to deal with the gift data. Now, this may seem overwhelming, but don't worry. Part of our service is to help you set this up. So we will work with you not only bringing your FIMS data initially if we need to into Razor's Edge, but the ongoing integration, setting this up, making this process as smooth as possible. So on here, we do have some gift defaults depending on how you use the Razor's Edge and how you're using FIMS, anything we have to do in there, especially as it comes to setting campaign funds, appeals, and packages. We have a batch option, so if we wanted to take all of the gifts from this month and load them up into a batch so you could review them first, we can do that. Or, depending on, again, the situation, we can just say, don't batch the gifts and just throw them straight on to the constituent record. We also have a payment screen, and we can also deal with any recurring gifts if they exist in the FIMS data. There's not much membership, events, or tribute or volunteer data in the system in FIMS, but if you ever had some data in there that was mapped and we needed to do something with it, we certainly could. The last thing I want to talk about is security. We actually have two levels of security. We have security not only on the plugin, so we can define who can actually get into the plugin. In the Blackbaud Cloud, the plugin just is there and access to everybody, so you may want to limit only to development staff or certain people who actually do the processing of the information to put the information in and have access to the plugin. And if they have access to the plugin, we also can do mapping security. What I mean by that is perhaps only Scott can only run the plugin, but Alyssa can actually edit and run the plugin. So depending on the organization, depending how many people may or may not have access to it, we give you whatever abilities you need to restrict information to running the plugin and accessing the data. So that is the mapping process. And as I said, part of the service that you're purchasing from us is unlimited training and unlimited support for these mappings. So if you have any questions or you want us to help you, we will help you set this up the first time, but we are always available. If you forget how to do it or you've got to change a staff or something, you can just call into our support line and we're more than happy to help you either make any changes to the mapping or actually just run the mapping itself. In terms of FIMS, you would work with the fabulous Blackbaud FIMS team to create the data mapping grids, which allow us to export the data out. All right, so I'm gonna get out of here, and I'm actually gonna run the mapping. Now, in here, this is all set up. So there's really nothing you have to do, except every month you download these two files, save them somewhere. That somewhere is saved in this complicated wording, but don't worry, we help you set that up. And then all you do is you hit the Update RE button. So I'm going to hit the Update RE button. It's now going to go find those two files. It's going to merge them together, and it's going to now stop processing them. When I first started the plugin, I highlighted very quickly the constituent matcher checkbox. That is what this is on the screen. This gives you the option, and again, this is an optional screen. This gives you the option of viewing the data prior to it going into Razor's Edge. So, for example, if we take a look at this, we've got Harrison International here. Now, you'll notice that in Razor's Edge, we have a record for them because the RE value column is filled in with data. And you'll notice that the address that came across here is different than what we have in Razor's Edge. And so it highlights it for us, or as a visual key going, hey, wait a minute, these are different. Do you want to update Razor's Edge with what's in the FIMS data? Is it better data? Or is your Razor's Edge better data because you've been working with it, you've been cultivating them, you've been doing moves management? How do you want to deal with that? If we wanted to update that, we could easily check on the checkbox, and it would update that piece of data in Razor's Edge. Some other things on the screen that's interesting. It tells us how we match the person. In this case, it matched it by organizational biographical information. We also have a data view where you can actually view the actual data coming across, so you can see what the matcher did, what the plugin did, and if you're going, well, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, wait, that's how it was in FIMS. Oh, we better go fix that, or we'll just leave it and update it here. This here looks like a button. That's because it is a button, and when I press it, it opens up the constituent record for you to take a look at. You can check the actual you could actually check the data, you can check the attributes, notes, whatever else you want. And then we also got annotations, and I'll talk about the search screen in a second. All right, so this record's good. I'm going to hit accept. It's going to now move on. You'll notice down here it gives us an indicator. In this file, I have 271 records. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm checking a few of these records. Now, I'm going to talk about in a minute how we don't have to review the other 200 records, but I'll talk about that in just 1 second. This is a second record. You'll notice there's nothing in red because everything matched exactly in Razor's Edge, so I can just move on here and hit accept. Now, the third record is brand new. I cheated. I knew this ahead of time. So there's nothing in the RE column, so it treats it as brand new. Now, there are binoculars here, which I highlighted a second ago. If I click the binoculars, it allows me to do my own search within Razor's Edge. So I can sit here, and I can take this out if I want, and I can go from there, and off we go, right? Can't find the able group, so I'm going to treat them as brand new, and I can just hit the add button. That's great. I've now processed 3 of the 271. Now, do I want to go through each and every single one of them? I might not. So we have a way around that. In the corner, there is the X field. In the X, it says, all right, hold on. Are you canceling the plugin, or do you want to just run it unattended? So the X sort of pauses and cancels the matcher and says, hold on. If you click yes, which I'm not going to do, it will just process all the rest of the records, dealing and doing any updates. Now, we can tell it if you find any updates to automatically update the system. If you think the FIMS data and the Razor's Edge data are the same, then that's great. If you think the Razor's Edge data is always better, you can tell it not to update. So we have some options there. Of course, if you say no, then it brings you back to the matcher for you to continue one by one. Or if you can hit cancel, cancels the plugin altogether and stops the process. Now, we also do have a way to restart the plugin. So let's say you did have 500 to do, and let's say you processed a couple hundred. It's now getting late, and you're like, you know what, I don't want to do any more today, or you've got meetings, you're getting interrupted. You can pause, you can cancel the matcher, note what number you're on, and then restart it again. So you don't have to run through itself. So if I hit yes here, this will automatically process the rest of the records. And also remember, within the mapping itself, you could turn off the matcher. And so when it runs, it'll just always run it. So we give you the flexibility that you need to be able to take all of your FIMS data and bring it in to Razor's Edge. All right, I'm going to hit cancel here because I'm done running the plugin. In my case, I had it create me a batch. You don't have to do that. That's optional. And when I click OK, it also made me a query again, which is optional. So that is a very quick overview of how the Super Importer Exporter will take the 2 files, again, these 2 files that were exported from FIMS, and allow you to map them and bring them into Razor's Edge. We try to be as flexible and as accommodating to whatever your standard operating procedures are. I hope this was interesting, and feel free to reach out to your Blockbot account executive if you want a more personalized live demo where we can talk specifically about some of your data and how that might map in to Razor's Edge or Razor's Edge NXT. Thanks, and have a great day.